All right. It is time once again for another episode of Midcard Mana. We have over here, or here, or here. I don't know how it's going to record. Sam Keola, the wrestling connoisseur. And of course, me, the loose cannon. Bang, bang. And we are talking about a lot of stuff. We have to catch up because last week I was sick, so
Yeah,
I could not record. My voice was basically gone.
sounds like you're still a little under the weather or something. My allergies have been killing me, so I understand.
My third is still a little bit scratchy, but way better than I was last week.
Yeah. So I've watched some things.
Or like, okay, so which direction should we go? I guess maybe let's just focus on the biggest thing, which was WrestleMania weekend, right? We
Yeah, I
did
think
the
we should
prediction.
just cover the news because there's I think even more than WrestleMania, there's a lot of news.
There's a lot of wrestling news going on.
So
I think the first big one that I wanna touch upon at least a little bit, and then maybe we can branch off and move on. Were the releases
yeah,
that happened right after WrestleMania weekend, and I think it's kind of a tradition now at this point where the week after WrestleMania they're just gonna cut a bunch of people loose. Uh, and of course, the three biggest names, arguably, were the Iconics and Samoa Joe.
yeah, definitely. I mean, especially Joe by a mile. You know, that one caught me. You know,
That would hurt me.
yeah,
It hurt my feelings.
everybody. Uh, Super surprised, but I mean, it's been going on for a little while now. Joe uh, would get injured or get a concussion and come back, and then they'd put him in another predicament, and the same thing would happen again. And I think it just goes to make a statement for the lifestyle that they lead, especially in WWE, where they're just traveling constantly and just really just putting everything online, especially particular wrestlers. You have like Joe. I have kids. Did I mention that? Joe, Kevin Owens, those type of guys who, if you're in a position of authority, you're like, hey, I need you to do this. They say okay.
Yeah.
They're going to give it their all. But Joe had been killing it on commentary.
Yeah. No, that was the thing that baffled me is like he was great doing commentary, and I don't know if what their plan was is to bring McAfee in from a while back, and they just sort of moved pieces around. But it came across as if he's replacing Joe, and he really like did not have that same level of experience or knowledge for commentary. And it just makes me think, did you just bring Pat McAfee up because he feuded with Adam Cole, and then you're gonna put Adam Cole on SmackDown? This is how you're gonna get Adam Cole up to SmackDown. It's gonna be the feud that makes sense, I guess, because who else?
The greatest thing I've read or heard out of any of this has been someone's comment that, oh my God, he just got off that big feud with Adam Cole, and now they're putting him on commentary with Adam Cole's father. I'll give you a moment.
That was good. That was really good. I like that.
I think Joe was so great on commentary, and everybody loves Joe. But putting McAfee there, you're kind of getting that heel commentary that has kind of been missing from the commentary set. Because Joe's definitely not heel on commentary. He brings definitely a wrestler's viewpoint. But I mean, if they could have a heel color commentator, that'd be great. I'm not a huge McAfee fan, so I actually haven't watched Raw yet since WrestleMania. So I'm just really let down to the product at this moment. I mean, I'll be honest. It's been building and building and building, and these cuts was just another, stake through the heart of it all. I mean, I get that they need to make cuts and whatnot, but they just did the big sale to NBC.
With Peacock and everything.
Yeah, so you would almost expect like, okay, well they're good where they at because they've hired quite a few people here lately, but apparently not. I mean, to me, it still doesn't make sense why you cut someone like Samoa Joe, other than maybe he had a large contract. That's the only thing I can possibly even think of.
Or other than maybe he was interested in doing other things. Like, that's the only thing I can imagine, is that maybe he wasn't being cleared to go back into the ring and he wanted to, or maybe he's looking to call it a career and they kind of didn't want to let that go. So I don't know. I haven't seen anything from Samoa Joe specifically saying, I wanted to go in this direction, they wouldn't let me, or blah, blah, blah. He hasn't done that sort of tell-all interview like Andrade did after he got released. So there's a lot that's still kind of left unspoken, and maybe it will never clearly get defined. I know a lot of people, though, are waiting for Joe to come back to wrestling.
It's kind of like a Daniel Bryan situation almost. I know Joe did make a comment before, like, everybody was just kind of waiting for the medical staff to release him for WWE, but like Bryan was cleared and WWE just never cleared him. And from what I understand, that's been Samoa Joe. He's been cleared to return, but WWE physicians haven't given him the clear yet. And I mean, I think that's kind of almost a political play, not a medical one.
Oh yeah. But at the same time, I have to think that maybe it comes from a place of good intentions, because he had such a quick succession of injuries. He had the sort of Kenta deal, so to speak, where he did fine for a good amount of time. It felt like he was just about to get to that next level of push, and then got injured. And then he came back, got injured again pretty quickly, like within a matter of like maybe a couple of months. And it just sort of, and then it just never kind of ended. And I felt really terrible for him, because
in the ring,
it
was a commercial I believe they were doing. I also wonder if it wasn't just Joe asking for his release. I mean, we're talking about his prime right now, really. Like his career's dwindling down. And there's a lot of hot wrestling right now. Yeah,
well, he's at the point where he could call it a career, and he'd be offered a Legends contract anywhere. Like this is almost a one last run sort of deal, similar to Christian and AEW, where this is very clearly the one last run before he calls it a career, and it could last a couple months, it could last a couple years. Obviously, both of these competitors, both these guys, Samoa Joe as well as Christian, have gotten themselves into the shape where they are able to do that run. I'm just sad because there were so many teases of Joe maybe coming back, especially with the feud that they had with Seth Rollins. I was like, Joe's gonna come back and just muscle bust him. It's gonna be a bad move, but he's gonna kill Seth Rollins with it.
Yeah, any of those really. I mean, Rollins, Lesnar, a few times Lesnar approached the commentary.
God,
you're like,
I wanted that so bad. I this, and I've said this a million times. Joe should have been the one to beat Lesnar. I think about that time where he snuck up behind him, choked him out, turned him purple at least once a week. Like, what a missed opportunity.
It was one of those opportunities where if Vince had wanted to put the title on Joe, Brock would have been okay with it.
Yeah.
Brock was he was a Joe fan.
And people would have been okay with it. It would have been believable.
It's all over Twitter, like when they announced Joe was released. But it was like this moment, this is the moment WWE failed because they should have strapped Joe. And it would have made Joe, at least his WWE career, it would have made him that threat that everybody knows that he is.
Yeah.
I
mean, like, what a well-rounded performer, this is, how could they have not looked at him and said, this is the guy? I get that he's not aesthetically the wrestler that Roman Reigns is, the tall, dark, and handsome, long flowing hair. But I mean, you look at Samoa Joe in the ring, and he is top tier. You listen to a promo, and God help you if you can find somebody that could have something to say back to Joe after he cuts a promo on them. It's just he was on such a different level than I think a lot of people expected, especially those that were unfamiliar with him going into WWE. And he got over huge.
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean,
it's just how did they not give him a monster heel run? That's my biggest question, because that would have been money.
I would
100%.
say, yeah, I agree with you. I would say that the problem there, and I mean, we're there now with Roman, but it's been this whole decade of Roman build, and everybody's kind of suffered from that. Not that it's Roman's fault, but it's it's management's fault. It's Vince's fault. I mean, the Bryan run that we should have gotten that we didn't. When he was at the height of his babyface career, really. I mean, we should have got that Dusty Rhodes level face run from Bryan, and we didn't. They didn't embrace it like that. Samoa Joe. I mean, just numerous others really suffered from the super mega push that Roman got that, really came from nowhere. There wasn't that like New Japan builds somebody, or if you see like, okay, this guy's fire right now, let's run with it. We didn't get any of that. Instead it was all trampled for the Roman push. And I think Joe was a casualty of that as well. Obviously, with the Brock thing.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I don't know if, looking back, especially now that Roman has a much more successful push, I don't think I could look back and say it was worth it, to sacrifice so many people along the way. And I've never disliked Roman Reigns. I've been disappointed with how he's been booked. But I mean, like, Roman Reigns was my first favorite in the Shield because Polynesian Pride. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm both glad and disappointed that he's been pushed so much. Glad because, hey, I'm always happy when a fellow Polynesian is at the top of a promotion. Roman Reigns and WWE, Jacob Fatu and MLW, all that stuff. Just stoked. Love it. Love everything about it. But
Joe,
when it comes at the expense of other people and other talented performers that I care about, that have been built up with story, that have been able to get themselves over, it becomes kind of kill fight. You know what I mean? And that choice can go for a lot of different companies with the people they decide to push. I don't necessarily understand, not to go too far off this Joe topic, but I don't understand that much, honestly, why the person that New Japan pushed to the top was Will Ospreay and not Jay White if they needed to push a foreigner. I've never been that much into Ospreay. And truth be told, I haven't watched any New Japan since Sakura Genesis because he's champ now, and Ibushi is nowhere to be found on any of the Road to Wrestling Dontaku shows. So I'm just sort of like, well, he was my Ichiban. now he's gone. So I'm not like, and I feel bad because of course then Jeff Cobb's in his stable, right? And I feel like I'm betraying a fellow Hawaiian, but like it really left a bad taste in my mouth. The Ospreay win and the Ospreay win clean, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's my slight little New Japan interjection. But my point being, you can have so many things great around a person pushing them. Will Ospreay has the rest of the Empire, which all three of those guys, Hanade, Jeff Cobb, and Great O'Khan, great talents. Love to watch them. So stoked that they're in a sort of closer to main event picture because all three of those guys deserve it. I've loved Toa for a long time now, and so I loved this repackaging. I was so stoked, and I've been saying, you know, Toa Hanade for Empire for a long time, especially because I was like, tag with Jeff Cobb, become the new Polynesian Power Trip. I know neither of you were in the original Polynesian Power Trip, but I'm sure Ati and Kaimana will be okay with it. But yeah, and then you look at Roman Reigns, and he's had people around him at 2 separate times. I guess maybe 3, if you also want to count his short, like, little baby face posse that Ali was part of, which I loved because Ali. But he wasn't really that much in a main event picture-ish at that time, so I don't know how much it counts. But I thought it helped endear him. I do. Seeing him get so excited and support other, like, lower on the card baby faces, I think helped people like me to be sort of like, yeah, somebody else is cheering for Ali besides me.
I think everybody's been waiting for the heel run with Roman, obviously. It's just like, I don't know, maybe 4 years too late.
And it works. Yeah.
It works. You know, everybody was for it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a shame that it had to come this late for him to be where he is. But then again, to sort of look at the other side of the coin, Shield were heels. Yeah. And anytime they tried to go back to heelish, it didn't really take. And then you look at the 2 people that he was with in that stable. You know my feelings on Seth Rollins, but you can't deny he is very, very popular and very, very over. I'd say he's a 6 or 7 out of 10 on the mic. That's gonna get us, like, you know, 5 dislikes for all 5 people that are gonna watch this video. But I
would agree with you. But
I mean, like, then you look at Dean Ambrose, John Moxley before he was John Moxley again in the interim when he was Dean Ambrose. He had the promo game. That's why he was sort of the de facto leader of Shield, is because he was the one that could get that heat. He was the one that could talk for the group. Yeah, he wasn't pretty in the ring, but that was never his style anyway. So to me, like, people when they would compare the different members of the Shield and be like, man, I don't know why Seth Rollins isn't in charge because he's so good. It's like, no, you don't understand. Technically, nobody's in charge.
Right.
He's their manager, essentially. He's their mouthpiece. He's the one that's getting this heat or this, you know, this push for them, depending on where they are on the card and alignment. So
when I first saw them, I thought it always came across to me that Dean Ambrose was the, like you said, the de facto leader, just because, you know, he would usually be the last one to talk, and, you know, he kind of like ended the promo and whatnot. Roman was always just the muscle. He was the guy that stood in the back. He had the physical charisma. But I think the problem with Roman was, like, you know, as soon as they gave him the mic, which was way too early, if he didn't just have that Billy Gunn moment, you know.
Yeah. No, believe in the Shield. That part Which he nailed every time when he did that.
Right. Once they moved away from that and they're like, here, Roman, talk for 5 minutes. It's like you couldn't really do that babyface run like they wanted. I mean, and I hate to bring him up, but even Benoit, he'd come out and he'd have a liner, one-liner or quip, whatever. But it was his physical presence just in the ring to come out and cut somebody off and like, okay, I'll fight you. And the place would go nuts. But we didn't get that from Roman. You know what I mean? Yeah. So to tie it back to Joe, he had it all. He had that physical presence. He could talk the talk. And he made it real.
Yes.
The Roman Brock situation with Joe, and Brock looks over at Joe, and Joe just, ad-libs it, and is like, hey, you look at me when I'm talking to you.
It was so good. There are so many great moments of Samoa Joe where you can tell that he was working on the fly.
Yeah.
Or that they had given him maybe like just slip a couple of these things into there, but besides that, go off. And he always took those opportunities and ran with them. I think of his promo against the bunch of guys. I think it was SmackDown. It was Randy Orton, Jeff Hardy, Ali, and AJ Styles.
Into the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some great stuff. Just the zingers on Jeff alone were.
Yeah, Randy lost it. That was great.
So I have no doubt Joe will end up somewhere, and it's going to be better for that company. I have my fingers crossed that he ends up in AEW. I know there's going to be
Okay, go ahead, but I'll say after.
There's so many good possibilities of matches that could come from it. Obviously, Joe versus Kenny would be huge on any stage. I'd love to get any revisit. Joe versus Daniels would just be a great way for Christopher Daniels to go out. Honestly, at the end of his career, getting another match between those two would be amazing. It would just be great. I think you could bring him in a number of ways. I think probably the easiest way to bring him in would just have Christian bringing in somebody, a friend, to fight off whoever. It'd be one of those. I'm gonna go way back here, but it'd be like the Eddie Gilbert Ric Flair feud. That just on paper it sounds amazing. I don't know if you're familiar with Eddie Gilbert, but you talk about talking the talk, and just as a babyface, he was great. As a heel, he was even better. But versus Ric Flair, you would think this would be an amazing feud, but it just never took off. And so Gilbert's like, I'm going to bring in a mystery partner. And that's where they brought in Steamboat, and it just, that went from there. To me, that would be a great way to do with Joe and Christian. I think that would be my number one place I would have him come in at. It's the biggest stage other than WWE.
You're right. As much as I don't like to own that way. Yeah.
Unless they have him come in and he kills Ospreay and takes over the Empire.
That's my dream booking, actually. You've nailed it right on the head. How did you know? But yeah, I think I'm one of the very, very few people. It's the future world champ. She did running. I think I'm one of the very few people that don't want him in AEW. Not saying that I would be mad if he went to AEW, but I think that I'd enjoy more if he went to Japan.
I would love
it. Doesn't have to be specifically New Japan. It could be Noah. It could be All Japan. I think Noah, he would have a lot of really cool matches as well.
There would be.
I yelled that he should go and beat Muta for the GHC.
It would be cool, but
But you're right about the stage. Like Joe at this point could have a large stage, and is somebody that could own that large stage.
Yeah.
And the biggest stage aside from WWE, you're right, is AEW. I have been less drawn by AEW. I'm totally burnt out as I wear my Tama Tonga Bullet Club shirt. I'm totally burnt out on the elite stuff unless they're, getting beat up by Mox and Kingston. Yeah. But I
add the elite stuff. I think it just needs to keep, morphing. But everything else I think has been pretty good at AEW so far. I mean, they have their own issues. I think with Joe, speaking from a business standpoint, which Joe is very adamant, he loves wrestling, but it is a business.
Yes.
I'd love to see him in New Japan. What are you grunting about? Kids. What?
I want my hot cocoa.
Anyway, business standpoint, if you have all this money on the table, all these offers, going to Japan every, month just does not, seem feasible at this stage of his career, I'm sure, with a family and whatnot, unless they're just offering just choke money. And I can't see that happening. Like I can see good money, but then if Impact or AEW comes forward and says, we'll pay you that much money and you work Wednesdays or you work Tuesday nights and you're home, and you don't have to travel overseas, especially right now.
Yeah, I think it depends as to what he feels he gets out of it. I had this discussion with my kiddos actually in class, and it's the trade-off. Some people are very blessed that they get to do what they love for money, but after a certain point, you gotta think: do you go for the bigger paycheck, even though it may sort of narrow your opportunities of certain things you want to do, or do you go for the more creative freedom or the more fulfillment and take the cut and pay? And it's personal to everyone. I think Joe could probably afford to do what he loves at this point. He could pull a Mox, not to make such a direct comparison, but you look at Jon Moxley. He's fortunate that he has the ability to kind of go through some indie promotions and have that big money contract with AEW, and then also have the tie-in with New Japan. I think Joe could probably pull that same sort of deal. Truly,
he probably could. But I think the difference there is that Moxley really wanted to go to New Japan. Yeah,
and I remember in his interviews he was saying that was what kind of hyped him back up to get back into wrestling as he was in recovery, which I thought was really cool. And Mox is living the dream right now in New Japan. He just called out Nagata, which I think is dope. But dear God, I don't think I can handle watching my most favorite dad in New Japan, Papa Nagata, get beat by Mox. I've seen him bleed once against Suzuki. I don't want to see him bleed again.
Everybody bleeds against Suzuki.
It's true.
I think, and I mean, Impact has already said it that they would love to have Joe back.
And Ring of Honor has had as well sort of put out feelers and been like, hey,
I think for Impact, it would definitely be a feather in their cap to get Joe back. I mean, it's new management and everything, so I mean, it's a huge possibility. They've picked up quite a few of the release stars, and it hasn't it hasn't had any shade on them like it has AEW. If you know what I mean.
True. Well, I think that, and this is going to sound very mean, but I think that the people that Impact has picked up comparatively have been people that were lessen the spotlight in WWE. So
Yeah.
it's either the fact that people didn't notice, or they were just sort of like, oh, well, you know.
Let me throw this out there. This coming weekend, we have title versus title, Impact versus AEW. In my opinion, I don't know if we'll cover this or not, but in my opinion, Kenny is going to take the belt. You know,
Yeah.
it's more light on Impact if Kenny takes the belt.
I mean, it'd be dope. It honestly, if Rich Swann is able to pull it off, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
We just throw this out there. You're Impact and you hire Samoa Joe. Who's better than to go back and get that title from AEW than Joe?
Yeah,
huge stage right there. Who knows?
That would definitely be very cool. I would buy back into Impact. I've kind of fallen off on Impact, with the exception of their women's division for a bit of time now. So
yeah, from when I watch Impact, I like it, but it's usually after the fact that it's aired. And this is kind of off topic, but there's so much wrestling right now. And despite it being, you don't have to go too far out of your way to watch wrestling. There's so much content out there right now, and life's so busy right now that it's almost too much. You know, you really kind of have to filter through something to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten to the point where it's literally impossible to be able to keep up with all of the different wrestling going on. If you just stick with WWE, it's already difficult to keep up with all of the different wrestling, because now they have, I believe, wrestling programming every weekday except Wednesday. They've got Monday Night Raw. They've got NXT on Tuesdays. Wednesday, I think, is their midweek break. Thursday in the mornings here. I don't know what time it is specifically, but in the mornings in Hawaii, it's NXT UK. And then Friday is SmackDown.
Yeah.
And 205.
It's way too much. I mean, I think Vince got too ambitious. I mean, the pandemic is one thing, but for a global product that claims to be, you know, so financially stable and blah blah blah, they're spread out so super thin. And my whole conspiracy theory is he sold all the rights to Peacock because of all the problems with Saudi Arabia.
Oof.
And, you know, I
think how they're unable to fulfill that contract now because they can't travel.
Right. And I think, you know, that last show was a huge, there was a lot of trouble between Vince and, you know, apparently the royalty in Saudi Arabia.
Apparently they weren't allowed to leave.
Well, yeah, I mean, Vince kind of threw everybody under the bus, and like all the upper guys jetted out, and all the workers got stuck. You know, so I mean,
yeah, didn't AJ Styles get stuck? Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah,
AJ Styles, who should be a top tier, got stuck.
Rock and Roman got out with Vince, and everybody else got stuck. But I think my conspiracy theory here is that Vince sold all the rights to pay back some of that money. Because I mean, they're making some major cuts right now. Like Joe, a lot of executives just got cut again. Here this time last year, Vince and Trips and Stephanie and a couple of the bigwigs all cashed out a lot of their stock. A lot of financial shenanigans seem to be going on. So I think. Do
you think maybe that's why they let go specifically Big Show and Christian to AEW? Oh, yeah. They realized they couldn't pay those legend contracts anymore, and those are two people that would be willing to go. So
not
to
just
speak.
contracts, but you got to think the legend contract and their working contract are two different things. So I think they that was an easy out on both ends. I think Christian just having that Legends contract was one thing, but him wanting to come back and them not being able to find the money for that, especially when they bring Edge back. It's like, okay, do you want Edge going to AEW? Because there was talks. Edge was looking, if he can't go to WWE, he'll go AEW. So obviously they're like, no, we don't want to lose that big of a name. For him to make his comeback in AEW would be crazy.
That was true. That would have been a big knock.
So yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, also it's come out now that there are plans for another WWE pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia. All of a sudden, everything's smoothed over again. So I'm just like, it's amazing what a couple $1 billion will do to amend friendships.
Man, I'm gonna be so sick in 2 years when this leaks that you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it probably won't be till Vince is dead that it'll leak, but
fair. So in about 20 years.
Strange, untimely death by poison.
Was this Russia?
I mean, that's what they do, right? Or they through the airport and they get chopped up or something.
Okay, I can 100% believe that Vince McMahon, crazy as he is, has just dosed himself with small little bits of poison so that he's built up an immunity. I can 100% believe that.
Who's the full now?
Yeah. He drinks full cups of it by this point. He's been doing it since the 80s. Everyone else is doing cocaine. Vince McMahon was dosing himself with tiny bits of poison.
I would believe that.
Yeah.
Daily dose of anthrax.
Yeah.
I can see it happening. Nobody can kill Vince.
Only Vince. Only Vince could kill Vince.
It was me all along.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on the Iconics?
I'm sad. There, especially because after the release of Billie Kay specifically, it was said that Kevin Dunn, right, was just like,
right.
I don't think that she's got a ceiling. I don't think there's anything for her. I don't get it. Which makes me sad because as somebody else pointed out far more eloquently than I could, I read online and I agreed 100%. This is a person, Billie Kay specifically. This is a person that after the Iconics broke up, they broke up the Iconics for, I still don't understand why. It was totally unnecessary. And I think it was probably to give Peyton Royce a push because then we saw her with other people, but then we didn't really see much of Billie Kay for a bit. And then she started getting these little backstage segments where at first she was managing a little bit of people and then she's looking for tag team partner. Like it was a bummer because you had this great tag team in the Iconics, right? These are two women that came up together and that was their whole thing. That was their story. And I thought it worked because, they came in together. They went through developmental together. They had a lot of tagging in NXT together. And then they came up to the main roster. They finally won the tag team championships. I loved all that. I thought that was beautiful. Even though they were heels, it was nice because then you see, hey, even heels can have, friends, partnerships, true trust with one another. And then they broke them up. And instead of having Peyton Royce actually follow through and get that singles push that I think a lot of people were expecting, they pair her with Lacey Evans. and then Lacey Evans is unable now to be in television, right? Because she's pregnant and it's unsafe for her to be around all that. I totally understand that. I'm not a big fan of Lacey Evans, but congrats to her because she seemed really happy about having another child. So great news for her. But then where did that leave Peyton Royce? It was struggling, kind of getting matches here and there, but never really gaining that much traction. And then she cut that promo where basically she was like, you know, here every week I do all this, so either use me or let me go somewhere else. And they were just like, all right, shoots. And it was such a shame. And especially, you know, Billie Kay, who was in WrestleMania, had a match at WrestleMania.
It's the same thing with Joe, right?
Same with Joe. Joe called WrestleMania.
By the way, you're being replaced. Also, by the way, you're fired.
Yeah, it felt like such a mean rib. You know what I mean? Because I think Billie Kay has done a tremendous job of like inserting herself enough in situations so people remember her. And yeah, it could be a sort of comedy bit backstage, but it's screen time, baby. Got her in a match. Got her getting to do what she loves to do in front of an audience in the grandest stage of all, WrestleMania. And yeah, it's just such a shame. I really hope that the releasing of the Iconics ends up being a blessing for them in disguise, because I mean, I know a lot. This is actually a tag team that I want to see go to Impact, because Impact's women's division, especially they have the women's tag team championships. They're so stacked. They definitely, like I said, they're that's the part of Impact I've actually followed much better than anything else in Impact is their women's division.
They have a good women's division over there.
And, you know, it would be very cool to see Jessie McKay and Cassie Lee go into Impact as the Iconics, go up against Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan, go up against Jordynne Grace. Jazz just retired, so I don't know who Jordynne Grace will... Or Jordynne Grace is tagging, I think, with Rachel Ellering now. So, I mean, there's a lot of possibility there for them to sort of regain what they lost. And especially because they were released together, I think that was maybe a slight act of mercy in that now, because they're stronger as a package deal, honestly, there's a lot more opportunity, I think, for them.
Yeah. I think, I mean, for me, it's so many different levels here. Because, like, number one, I've always said, like, I could find a position for anybody. Like, if I was a writer there, you know, they always say, you know, they don't have anything for them in creative. I would be the guy that could find anything for anybody, even Mojo Rawlings. I mean, you got the Iconics, and I've said for a long time, like, Billie Kay, she could be like the Hacksaw Jim Duggan of the women's division. Easily. You know, I mean, she's got that comedy factor. She's always been a heel for the most part, but like everybody loves her. You get that comedy factor in there. She can have some wins, she can take some losses, but you need people in the women's division. What irritates me about the women's division is that they don't treat it as a main thing, really. I mean, there's all this lip service and everything for the women's division, and you have the fan base and everything for it, but none of that really means anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no prestige. There's no. They don't really have women's division on a pedestal. Like, the titles aren't equal to like the men's world championship.
I think they have parts of them. For WWE specifically, I think they have parts of the women's division on pedestals. You look at specifically, let's go back to WrestleMania. You look specifically at the Raw Women's Championship match versus the SmackDown Women's Championship match. And honestly, both of them felt appropriate for where they were on the card. Not just because one is a Royal Rumble winner match and the other wasn't. But you look at the story that they built around specifically Bianca Belair. You know, one of the last of their homegrown talents that has made it this far. And Bianca is a very, very, very naturally gifted performer. She's got the power. She's got the speed. She's got that athleticism. And she's also got a gimmick, a character that just fits her to a T. You know, she is probably their biggest shining example of performance center success.
Yeah.
She is great. I love Bianca Belair. You know, I've bought into her very, very quickly because she just has it. And then you have her against Sasha Banks, who is another very, very talented performer. Triple H himself even acknowledged her as a ring general, someone that's able to kind of be able to put these matches together, have these moments. She knows what she's doing in the ring, and that match felt every bit as main event worthy, and possibly even more main event worthy than many other matches on the card. You know, I felt that was a great WrestleMania moment. I felt like the story and everything around that match and everything in that match really came together very nicely to have that big moment in a way that I don't feel the Raw Women's Championship had. And I think not just because it wasn't the last event, the last match in the show, but you look at the feud going in between Rhea Ripley and Asuka. It was very, very rushed. Some people say it was because it was supposed to be Charlotte and they rushed up Rhea to replace her. Some say that it was always supposed to be Rhea, and they just were unsure of if they were going to have Charlotte beat Asuka for the title before that. Like, there's a whole bunch of stories that were flying around that I've heard as to sort of explain away the Raw Women's Championship match. And it makes me very sad because I also love both the performers that were in that. I think Rhea Ripley is another talented performer who, with a gimmick change, was able to really get to that next level that I don't think she would have been able to accomplish had she kept her original like look. Because honestly, and it's gonna sound terrible, but I used to confuse her with Lacey Evans when she had the long hair and the like red gear and all that. Because I was like,
I always thought she was like
Lacey Evans'
daughter.
Yeah. And other people are just like, oh, it's another Charlotte. And you know, she had a chip on her shoulder about that. She changed it up. She looks great now. Like it's a very distinct gimmick and it's a very distinct aesthetic. So now everyone knows which one is Rhea Ripley. You don't confuse her for nobody. Right. Which I love. And then, of course, Asuka, who is, at this point, a legend in wrestling in general, not just the WWE. And while I'm glad that she didn't get geeked out as much as she did in her match against Charlotte a few years ago, man, going into this, I just knew, you know, there was no suspense for me. There was hardly any story, but I already knew that they were going to have Asuka lose again at WrestleMania to push somebody else. And I don't know if that part also killed my, I don't know, interest in the match. I mean, I also was like 99% sure Bianca Belair was gonna win, but it didn't feel like such a buzzkill knowing the outcome of that match. So I don't know if that has something to do with their ability to tell a story in the ring, their ability to have that back and forth with one another. But I don't know. It was just it was hard, and it made me very sad. Because as somebody that likes, you know, women's wrestling and likes all of the talents involved, it was just sort of like, oh, like it was very little hype for me.
See, I think that's where I'm coming from. Is like women's wrestling in WWE, it still takes a back seat to everything. Like I know Bianca and Sasha got to main event, but to me, it was lip service because the rest of the year they're going to be the opening card, they're going to be the middle of the card, and for them to say, okay, look, they're main event worthy, except the rest of the year they're not going to be. They're not going to be main eventing except once or twice a year, whereas the men's will main event every week. They're not going to main event pay-per-views except once or twice a year. We'll throw them a bone. But you guys are supposed to think that this division is on par with the other stuff. That's why they have the WWE title for the men, and for the women, it's the Raw title. That's why they have Universal World title for men, and for women, it's a SmackDown title. You don't have a world title for women. You'll notice. They don't call it a world title. It's a Raw title. They don't call it the Raw title for men. You know what I mean? So, it's the words are powerful because that's how they're treating the women there.
Huh. I never noticed that, but you're right.
You have a Raw title, and we'll throw you a bone. You can main event Raw every now and then. You can main event a Evolution pay-per-view. You can main event, maybe a random off pay-per-view here or there. If you're fighting Charlotte, that's typically how it goes. If you're fighting, one of their glory people, but they will always treat it as a secondary title. And so they'll always treat the women as a secondary division. And to me, you can't do that all year long and then say, but you're supposed to believe this is a historic moment, which it was, but it's lip service to the fans. It's not, it really goes back to like wrestling as a con, it's how it started. And that's exactly what Vince is still doing. He's like, look, this is why we push our women. Look, they're, it's a historic moment. Two black women that are main eventing WrestleMania night 1, because our real main event is Roman versus Edge. As far as like it's standing
true
out,
I did also feel that, and I felt definitely that it was such a come down on night 2. Night 1 was pretty solid, and then night 2 happened and I was like, like if they had switched the nights around, I felt like it would have been ended on a much higher note, not just because of course the babyface Bianca Belair would win, but because I felt like the story buildup of Sasha Bianca was so much clearer and so much easier to invest in. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I love Daniel Bryan. I like Edge, I like Roman Reigns, but
this is
I don't know. It was just like, I didn't get much satisfaction out of it, even though, I didn't, I should say, not just because my main man Daniel Bryan didn't win, but also because it was such a book close ending, like how you said, season finale. It was a definitive ending to it. It's not like it wasn't clear that Reigns beat him. He pinned both of them at the same time. Right. It was such a like, close the book, now on to new stuff. And I get that that's why it ended WrestleMania night 2, because it felt so definitive of closing the chapter of a lot of things to move on to new things.
They weren't going to close out WrestleMania with anybody other than Roman, or if they could have gotten Brock back.
Yeah.
That ability. But I think this entire WrestleMania, the only match that had story, like from the Royal Rumble onward, maybe even prior to the Rumble, was Sasha versus Bianca. Everything else was thrown together, really at the last minute. Lashley versus McIntyre
again
was never it was always supposed to be Lashley versus Brock, but they couldn't get Brock. So it was like last minute, we'll throw McIntyre back in there, which obviously, you had McIntyre lose, which is kind of crazy. And every match from there, like you said, like Asuka versus Rhea Ripley, again, it's supposed to be Charlotte. Then everything fell apart, and then it's just every match something was thrown together. Roman versus Edge. I mean, that would be the only other one other than Bianca versus Sasha. But then at the last minute, they're like, for whatever reason, okay, this isn't strong enough. We got to throw Daniel Bryan in there.
Yeah, it's so weird to me that they added Daniel Bryan in it, but still had Edge be part of the pinfall. You know what I mean? Like, deep down, as much as I wanted Daniel Bryan to win, I suspected that the main reason they added Daniel Bryan was for Reigns to win without pinning Edge. And continue that feud. But since he pinned both of them, it's sort of like, well, it's still over, Then it's like, why? Is it because you wanted to crush Daniel Bryan and also end two feuds at once? But then it doesn't make sense to me, because then who is coming up now to go up against Reigns? Who is it? It might have been Cesaro after that first SmackDown after WrestleMania, but then Rollins was like, "We're not done yet." It's like, okay, I thought we were. I was looking forward to not having to look at you, but okay.
I think Bryan was added to take less impact off of Edge. I think they were worried
in the match. Yeah,
I think they were worried about having Edge and Roman, for that fact, overdoing it too much, I guess would be the best way to put it, and get more mileage out of these guys in the long run, which is crazy since Daniel Bryan. I mean, we just got him back, really. So all three of these guys, it's like, are you crazy? Why don't we just make it a death match? Just make these three guys, Roman.
I mean, that would have appealed to me in a different way. So
yeah, this way. But yeah, even that match itself, like we're talking about throwing together the last minute, maybe not last minute, but a couple months there, obviously had Edge whipped. You could have gone any which way, but for a whole year or two, the talk was Roman versus The Rock.
Yeah,
and again, couldn't get The Rock to come in, so it's kind of crazy how Vince had plans but could not solidify anything all year going into WrestleMania. A lot of people have commented on this, about how this year was so different than the others, that even the other years that they wait and don't solidify plans until like January, but this year it was like way really close to WrestleMania before plans were actually solidified, and I think it showed. This was a really weak WrestleMania because the storylines just weren't there. I mean, Braun versus Shane McMahon out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I still don't know where that feud even came from. It was just like, let's just throw this out there. This is going to be on WrestleMania.
As you know, I love my Silver Fox, Shane McMahon. But it was weird. It was definitely weird. I enjoyed it because, Shane O'Mac. But yeah, it was confusing to me why it mattered so much, and why now all of a sudden Shane McMahon's just sort of like, Braun Strowman's stupid. Like, like, who cares? Did anyone really think, like, did anyone think he was Mensa genius? Like, is this a revelation? Like, what is this? And then Braun's justification for going after Shane. So, I don't like bullies. It's like, just great stuff. It's for the elementary school crowd.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where they went with so many things. To tie everything back, women's division, the Iconics. Like I said, I think how you don't have a Billie Kay as fodder for the women's division, because you have to have people who never become champion. I'm sorry, but my biggest beef with women's division has always been everyone has been champion, and it's great you hire you hire people to come back to fill out the division, but you can hire Mickie James a million times, and she's already been a multi-time champion. No matter how.
You know who hasn't held the women's championship?
Billie Kay.
You know who else? And Billie Kay has technically been women's tag champion.
Tag champion, yes.
Tamina Snuka.
Yeah.
She has never held a women's championship in the WWE. Her only title that she has held, she has been a one-time 24/7 champion.
Yeah.
I just looked this up not too long ago because I was like, I don't remember Tamina ever having a run. Did I miss it? Am I just forgetting? And then I looked it up and I'm like, she's never had a run.
I expect she'll have a minor run when she's done.
I think she'll have a tag run with Natalya.
She might,
and it'll be part of a Natalya thank you run because Natalya has held all the titles. You know what I mean, except for the tag belt. So,
but I mean, they really do. They need people there who can fill out the division, and be mid-carders and jobbers and upper-carders. You need someone in that Chris Jericho, Scott Hall position to challenge and get the next person ready to challenge for the title. The women's division has always...
That sort of gatekeeper position, if you will.
It's always been, okay, whose turn is it? And I hate that about the division. You need a solid roster, and to not use Billie Kay and Peyton Royce and just fill that out. It doesn't make any sense to me. And you don't want people there that's just going to sit in catering all day. But, like I said, Billie Kay in a hacksaw position where she can be someone used in the beginning of the show, add comedy, can be a big baby face with a crowd that doesn't need the title is worth the money. Because, I mean, how much money could they really have saved cutting the Iconics? They're not Samoa Joe. They're not bringing in, that money.
Hey, I have an Iconic shirt. I purchased an Iconic shirt.
Well, I mean, all right, you purchase Iconics. How many Billie Kay shirts would you purchase if they gave her that hacksaw run? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, let's look at hacksaw merchandise. He can sell shirts. He can sell flags. He can sell 2x4s.
I was going to say he can sell pieces of wood.
He can sell his image with the tongue hanging out. To me, Billie Kay would be the merchandise seller. I mean, you could literally have her go out with merchandise to sell. You can have her go out and shoot shirts into the audience. She's over the top. So to me, it was a wrong choice cutting her. And I think Peyton, she may not have had the upside that Billie Kay really did, but as a second to somebody, as a jobber, as anything, I think they were good enough in the ring that it would have worked, and they could still have used somebody of that caliber on the roster. It's just I don't know. I don't get it. Like, when you need to build a division, why would you cut these people? Especially when they've been on TV, they're recognizable. Yeah, it's all right there, but they're not Mojo. I mean, let's be honest here. You got the Iconics, you got Mojo. Guaranteed Mojo was making more than the Iconics, but the upside to the Iconics versus the upside to Mojo, I get cutting. I could have.
Well, Mojo had Gronk. That's what it was. Mojo had those connections to people outside the business.
Gronk went back to football.
He sure did. Didn't last long in the WWE.
Now, like Mojo, I could have easily made him a disciple of Seth Rollins.
And it really seemed like he was going to go in some weird direction, because you remember the series of promos that he had where he's like looking in the mirror and he had all the jagged makeup on. Like, it seemed like he was about to,
prior to Gronk,
do something. Yeah. And then, and then it all disappeared. And then when Gronk left, they never brought Mojo back. It was sort of like he was a bargaining chip. He's like, oh, we'll put your friend back on TV if you come.
Right. So I mean, that's another of those situations there. I don't know what Mojo is going to do. I can see him going to Impact, maybe.
Yeah, I think he would be served by Impact. Honestly, I think that he. Okay, and this is going to sound again very mean, but I think that he should just go full crazy hype bro and be just super wacky and out there and go in Impact. I think that kind of crazy gimmick is better served there than it would be in AEW. Not saying I wouldn't like to see him in AEW just being like weird and crazy and freaking everyone out. I think that would be hilarious. But I think there's also a place for it there. And I think that he would, Mox would take one look at that and just, like shove him in a locker or something.
I think if you had him come to Impact, you could easily have him come in as Matt Cardona's friend, Zack Ryder's friend.
Yeah, that's true. Hype Bros. Forgot about that.
Join Eric Young and do a Cardona Young feud. Eric Young's got his crazy ass group there. Mojo would fit right in. Yeah. So there you go, Mojo.
Oh, you know what I just realized? Eric Young's back in Impact, right? You know who else has been in Impact for quite some time? They could have a mini reunion if they haven't already. Again, I haven't followed the men's division very well.
The Madman.
Sawyer Fulton.
Yeah, Madman Fulton. Who's with Ace Austin.
Callahan. Oh, yeah. Ace Austin now. He was with Callahan.
Yeah. So, yeah. He would totally fit right back into Eric Young's little group, who has Joe Doring with Eric Young. Yeah, I was really surprised with that. They brought in Joe Doring from All Japan fame. So that's pretty cool. Not to get off topic. Who else got released?
Let's actually look it up because I can't remember because I am terrible. I'm an awful person.
I mean, everybody says that released. So it's kind of hard to remember who's not being used versus got released. I was honestly expecting Andrade to be released. I mean, not Andrade, Alistair to be released. Since they haven't. Yeah,
I'm surprised, but I think that because he would be scooped up really quickly, so I think they're holding on to him still. All right, let's see. And this has the full release. So Wesley Blake, another member of the Forgotten Sons. There's only one now, which they released the Forgotten Sons in the complete incorrect order. Right. Jackson Riker should have been the first to go.
Right.
And then Wesley Blake, and then Steve Cutler should have been the last man standing because Steve Cutler's the man. Actually, I think he doesn't get enough love. Except now his girlfriend is knockout champ Deonna Purrazzo, so now he's getting enough love. But I mean, man, he had such a hard time getting traction. He tagged with almost literally everybody in NXT. Like, I remember when Steve Cutler tagged with Angelo Dawkins. I remember when Steve Cutler tagged with Jason Jordan. Like,
yeah.
As they were both trying to find their perfect tag team partners. Of course, Jason Jordan with Chad Gable before his unfortunate neck injury, and Angelo Dawkins way before Street Profits fame. So, Wesley Blake finally got cut. So now he's the only Forgotten Son left is Jackson Riker, and the only member of that tag team with him and Murphy is Murphy. I'm surprised Murphy still is going because I really thought that they were gonna cut Murphy. As much as I love Murphy, I think he's super talented. I thought they were gonna do some dumbass shit like that. Mojo Rawley, Bo Dallas.
Oh yeah, Bo. How could I forget? And there was a lot
Callisto, Tucker, Chelsea Green.
Tucker. It's crazy, like the amount of talent that they cut. Like people who are talented. Yeah, I mean,
it's such a shame to me that they cut Tucker
Yeah.
After breaking up Heavy Machinery. Because Heavy Machinery was so over, man. So over.
Vince doesn't like tag teams. And this goes back to
and then they just cobble together weird tag teams. Poor Chad Gable. And I've never really been a big fan of Chad Gable, but I did, and I will admit this on air, so to speak. I did shout Ready Willing Gable to Chad Gable when he came to Wrestle Oahu, because I don't boo people in person. I love them too much I love wrestling too much to do that. So I was just like, Ready Willing Gable, and he was like, yeah, and I'm like, I'm the only person cheering for you. What the hell's going on?
Who's Gable with now?
He's with Otis Alpha Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, isn't that such a shame? Isn't that just ridiculous? You put Otis on the track for a singles push. You take away the Money in the Bank from him, and then you just shove him back into another tag team. With Chad Gable of all people, like it was weird.
They missed on a lot of different factors. I think Gable, they missed the boat having Jason Jordan as Kurt Angle's son and not Chad Gable. I mean the
Jason Jordan ended up being his son because he was bald like Kurt Angle, but also because of the rib, and it was a waste of a rib.
If you look at them though, you're going to do this angle. You look at Gable and you look at Angle, and I mean it's like the writing is all there. The wrestling ability, the size comparison.
I mean, they both went into the Olympics. Tried.
They easily made Chad Gable Angle, hyphenated last name, Chad Angle Gable Angle, a household name like they did Kurt way back in the day. Kurt managing his son, you could have turned them heel, and it would have worked for Gable and gotten him at least in the upper card. Maybe an Intercontinental or U.S. title run. They could have done something more than with it. That's all I'm saying. And so now he's in a team with Otis. Again, another missed opportunity. I've never been the biggest Otis fan, but you give him the Money in the Bank, which is one of their most exciting pay-per-views in my opinion. You give it to Otis, which I think a lot of fans like me just kind of buried their head in the sand when that happened because I just wanted to headbutt the floor. It was just ridiculous. And then you don't do anything with it.
You have him lose it to The Miz. That was the thing that infuriated me the most. It wasn't that he didn't do anything with it. I could have been okay with him gimmick losing it. Like literally physically losing it because he's bumbling.
But it did nothing for The Miz.
Yeah, because he was a transitional champ.
Right, but I mean, you could have done that without the Money in the Bank. You could have had a Miz win a number one contendership and did the exact same thing. I think with Otis, if they had just continuously had him try to cash in and fumble it, since his character's a goofball anyway, and then I think Braun was heel at the time. A Braun Otis feud would have been pretty entertaining. It would have been stupid off the charts, but it would have been entertaining. You have Big Braun being a bully, you have Otis being a goofball, and you have the immovable object, feud. Could have been something. You could have had Otis lose the Money in the Bank like so many else have. It was just, again, on WWE's part, it was a fumble during this pandemic when, one, you don't have an audience, so you could have built your storylines any way you wanted, and you wouldn't have had a crowd booing or not cheering properly like you want. Because that's been a big thing for WWE, like the big push for Roman, and everybody's booed him out of their arenas for so long. Without a crowd there, they could have just booked how they wanted, and the fans at home would just accept it for the most part. They had that aspect. And all this time to build toward WrestleMania without a crowd, really, Yeah, they brought in the Thunderdome, but without a crowd, they could have really built something story-wise, like a TV show that they claim to be. You know, we're TV, we're other wrestling companies. They don't the TV wrestling aspect. That's why they have NXT, because they teach wrestlers to work for TV, but they don't write for TV, even though they hire Hollywood writers and whatnot. Like, you had a moment where you could write for TV, write out long-term storylines, and just book something worthwhile to build to a huge WrestleMania. And they didn't do it. They fumbled the ball, and they had a shitty WrestleMania as a byproduct.
Allison's gonna judo throw you. It's gonna be great. I'm so excited.
Into another dimension.
But I wouldn't go so far as to say it was a shitty WrestleMania. But it just didn't live up to what it could have been. You know, there's a lot that could have been.
Yeah. By far.
And then another person that got released is Callisto as well, and Chelsea Green. Two people, Callisto, who had so much early success, or not, had a lot of success in like a very small window of time, like within like a year or two, and then just faded into Lucha House Party. But I think he also had some injury time in there as well.
Yeah,
and he just couldn't regain the place he had before.
Well, I mean, you know, his big thing was taking the belt off Ryback, so can't really.
Yeah, that was great. That thrilled me, as you know.
But no, seriously, like Callisto, they kind of dropped the ball with too. You know, this was your second coming for Rey Mysterio, essentially, and they didn't do it. And it's to me, it was mind-boggling. Even when you bring Rey back and you don't do a Callisto Rey program.
I know.
Like, what?
What a waste! What a waste!
Like, you could have put them together in a tag team. Would have been huge, at least for a little while.
Have them go against Lucha House Party. Have the Mysterios versus Lucha House Party even. If you're gonna especially push Rey's son, which I think there was no way they weren't gonna do that. Have it be a tag team, go up against the old style Lucha versus the new style Lucha, so to speak.
Yeah. Even just putting them together in like a big group. I know, like, they split them up because Callisto was tired of not being used, so he thought if he's not in the Lucha House Party, he would get used, and then they just didn't use him ever again.
They're like, well, we're gonna continue to use the rest of Lucha House Party. If you're not gonna be part of that, I don't know what you can do, dog. Like, it was such a bummer too.
It is.
And I think it's, again, goes back to the do you take the money and sort of grit your teeth and do the comedy, or do you hold out for something better with the risk of maybe nothing better ever coming for you? You know, it's a hard choice. I don't know what choice I would make if I was given the same position. So,
you know, I think if you're hungry to have the platform, and what I mean by that is if you have Ambrose versus Callisto, Ambrose has had the platform, so he can say, you know, I've made my name. Like Al Snow says, you got the platform to go make your name. You use the most of it. Ambrose has done that. He had the opportunity. He accomplished it. Now he can go elsewhere and make money. You know, New Japan, wherever he wants to go, he can live the dream. Whereas Callisto, you know, his name's gotten out there a little bit, but he didn't have the platform to go stereo blown. You know what I mean? So he can't leave, go to Japan and be like, hey, I'm gonna win the Super Juniors because my name's Callisto. Like, he can go to Japan and
although that would be dope.
It would. He might get in there, but he's not gonna win it. Like, you know, oh my God, we have to have Rey win because he's Rey Mysterio. You know what I mean? He's a legend. Whereas Callisto is just, you know, he's Callisto, Samurai del Sol now. But I think it is that, like, he was hungry to make his name, but he wasn't given that opportunity to make his name. And so for guys like that, you want to leave and you want to like hone your craft and you want to make a bigger name out there and try to get somewhere. Whereas like if you're Ambrose or Moxley, you got the name, you can do anything you want now. And like Joe, you can do anything you want, just depending on what you want. Do you take the money or not? Whereas I think Callisto, it is a bit of, okay, I can sit back and collect this money. Or even Sin Cara is another, dude who I think was there for like 10 years. And he took the money until he got to a point where he was like, it's not worth it. I want to go out and wrestle and try to make a bigger name. But yeah, Callisto was another name that was kind of surprising, but wasn't.
It was surprising to me in the sense that I was like, oh no, Lucha House Party. But then I stepped back and I was like, well, he actually hasn't done Lucha House Party stuff in quite some time. And for a bit, I thought it was because he was still injured or that he was out on a new injury. And then I found out that, oh no, he just didn't want to sell out like that anymore. But I get it. But then it's sort of like if they give you something or if they allow you to have something and you decide you no longer want it, they're not going to give you something else in return. They're gonna wait for you to maybe give them something else, and if you don't, then they're just gonna be like, all right, well, bye. Like, it's a shame because like how you mentioned, he's a very talented performer. He really truly kind of is the first main one in this new sort of generation of wrestling, this new era, to really bring back that lucha libre style. He was the second coming. He was the most popular one. He was the only true luchador for quite some time on the roster until they started bringing people back, until they started bringing in people like Andrade, who wrestled then without a mask, and Joe Garza, El Hijo del Fantasma, or Santos Escobar. I had to try and remember what his name was now. And then the Cruiserweight Classic with Gran Metalik and Lince Dorado. And it kind of became a little bit more, but
we could diverge on this topic because like WWE wants that Hispanic factor because they want to get those fans in. But every Hispanic wrestler they hire is they're hiring them because they're Hispanic, not because of their talent per se. Like you have to be talented to get there. Don't get me wrong, but once they're there, they're just that Hispanic factor. You know what I'm saying? Like they're never going to like strap you. Like I think Andrade was the closest one really to like rise above that sort of. Yeah,
he had the NXT. He was the NXT champion.
And they brought him up to the main roster, and it was like a fight. Like, here's this wrestler that is just, he's going to be a legend, but Vince just doesn't see it. Vince just sees Hispanic wrestler. This is my ticket to getting Hispanic fans. I'm not.
Which, I mean, it did work to a certain extent. It did bring people over who were ingobernables, but it then just kind of undercut him because he wasn't given anything after that, right. And they hardly ever acknowledged his lineage or his background as La Sombra. I think NXT touched on it a little bit. When he first came, they talked about how, he gave up his mask to wrestle in NXT. He's wrestling as himself. And I think they did something similar with Phantasma, where Phantasma unmasked himself.
Yes.
He wrestled with the mask at first, and then he unmasked himself, and he's like, you know what? I don't need this mask. I don't need to be El Hijo del Fantasma. My name is Santos Escobar, and I'm making my own legacy now, and that whole thing, which I loved, but at the same time, it's sort of like, I wish that they had gotten more into the lineage and the importance of wrestling, especially when you come from a wrestling family in Mexico. It's different than when you come from that legacy in the United States. I mean, they build up so much time with Ric Flair and Charlotte Flair, with the Ortons, when Cody and Dustin were in the WWE with Goldust and Dusty Rhodes and all that. They spend so much time talking about this legacy that goes down for generations. For some wrestlers, the Harts, Tamina Snuka and her father before that whole murder trial thing. Anyway, they spend so much time talking about legacy and then give just the tiniest amount of attention when it's legacy from a different culture, you know. And Lucha Libre, while not as explored in the WWE aside from Rey Mysterio Jr., and they always drop the junior
right
in the WWE specifically. I think WCW acknowledged him as Rey Mysterio Jr. But yeah, and especially now with the story that they're telling with Rey and his son, what a great time then to focus in on the storied, lineage of Lucha Libre.
For Hispanic wrestlers was Eddie and Chavo, and talking about their, family legacy and whatnot. Anybody
Los Guerreros.
And I think, like I said, I think it goes back to they're not seeing them as, the monsters awake. They're not seeing them as a commodity of a wrestler. Come. They just see them as a product. Hi. Come here. Come. No.
All right, we'll wrap this. We'll wrap this up soon because now the children are awake.
The Eater of Worlds is awake.
The Eater of Worlds.
Yeah. What'd you find? Oh, come. Okay. Come. Oh. There you go.
He's future Universal Champ.
Yeah. So yeah.
Allison's gonna be World Champ. He's gonna be Universal Champ. Yeah, he's not happy about being Universal Champ, man.
He wants them all. He wants all the belts.
Belt collector. 100%. And with that touching family photo, this will be how there's a lot going on. I think you guys are fading into the ether, and with that, I guess we will conclude.
Right here. Okay.
Yeah, he's got kids. He needs this job in Midcard Mana that doesn't pay. But I mean, hey, if people want to pay us, that's cool too.
Yeah. Come on, Vince.
Yeah. Come on, anyone. We have a Patreon that neither of us check because we're awful.
Tony Khan.
Tony, Don Callis, Scott Demore, Kerry Stilkin, Sukabayashi in New Japan, Muta, anyone.
And me, pay me.
All right, so this is Midcard Mana signing off. We talked about a lot of the releases, some WrestleMania fallout. I'm going to say this really quickly. Poor Chelsea Green for never getting any traction in the WWE. Another person that had just Kenta luck with just getting injured at her debuts like multiple times. Just a rough time. It's a cold world.
But she got that money, though.
She got that money, and she'll probably go back to Impact.
Probably.
This is Midcard Mana. This is Loose Cannon and Sam Keola, the wrestling connoisseur, signing off. Bang, bang.